So this was a journey which I think could be suitable as something to follow for anybody who might be thinking about investing in, especially in the power sector, where everybody knows now it's going to have a huge expansion.
Moving back to the automotive sector, Jim, what sort of collaboration do you envisage between Saudi companies and American companies in that space?
Well, when you think about SEER as a startup, the only way we can get going quickly, efficiently, and sustainably is by partnering with the best of the best. And so in terms of the automotive industry, when you think about collaboration in the automotive industry, invariably you end up in the United States of America. So I'm proud to say that we are collaborating with 10 companies in the United States. We've already talked about Javis and Lear. The American companies benefit because we're utilizing their innovations, we're propelling their job growth. We benefit because we get the technologies that we need and the parts that we need to get moving quickly. But collaboration just doesn't mean business deals. One of our focuses is on human capital development. And in partnership here with the Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of Education, we have kicked off a cooperative education program with Kettering University in Flint, Michigan. As a Kettering grad, I know the power of their cooperative education program. We have 43 of the best and brightest technical engineering graduates now in Flint, Michigan, undergoing a curriculum created just for us in battery electric vehicle technology. The students will spend 6 months at Kettering, and then they'll move to one of the Tier 1 suppliers that we've already talked about in the Detroit area, the automotive capital of the world, and they'll work either at Javis or Lear or one of our other suppliers for 6 months, and then they'll come back to us ready to hit the ground running in their respective areas of the business. So this is how our partners, Kettering University, our supply base, they're helping us build tomorrow's leaders today. So it's collaboration across the board.
Mark, workforce development really essential, right, for resilient supply chains?
Yeah, absolutely essential for us here in the kingdom. Obviously, the plant that we're building here will have 150,000 of capacity, which is our largest plant. So therefore, we need local people. And we are very active in developing this. Actually, would like to point out, as of today already, more than 65% of our employees here in the kingdom are Saudi nationals. And we are increasing this percentage all the time. We are collaborating with HRDF on a program where we are training people for the plant in AMP2, which were in Cake. And those people, they come for 6 months also to the US in our plant in Arizona. They get trained, and after they get trained, then they come back here into the kingdom. Beyond that, we have a cooperation with NAVA, the National Academy, Automotive and Vehicle Academy, where we also have those transfer programs where people come over to the United States to train. But then it's not only bringing people from Saudi to the United States, but it's also the other way around. We recently signed a cooperation with KAUST, with the university, and we are bringing our brightest engineers over here to work with KAUST on leading edge technology topics, be it autonomous driving, AI modelings, simulation, crash testing, all of those things that are really crucial for the automotive industry, and have our engineers come here to work with the local leading university to develop this talent here locally. So it's very important for us, and we're investing heavily.
Ken, how can joint ventures in the energy sector support advancing localization, particularly in Saudi's case?
Yeah, absolutely. Joint ventures are a way that we can accelerate the speed of development. So as we think about our localization initiatives, by having strong partners like we do in our Plant Digital joint venture with Aramco, we're able to get real customer insights, be able to understand what their needs are, and develop very dedicated training programs for the localized workforce that is able to meet those customer needs as they develop solutions. So much like what Mark is doing at Lucid, we're able to partner with multiple local universities to do training right here in the region, along with allowing engineers to come over to our U.S. capabilities and labs and train there to come back and take the latest and greatest knowledge into their local facilities.
Jerry, coming back to you, from smart industrial zones to logistics hubs, what role does the PIF play in enabling the digital infrastructure, which is going to be, extremely important, that infrastructure, the computing power needed for agile, tech-enabled supply chains? How is it that you go about bringing that technology and diffusing it locally?
Thank you. Deep local tech-enabled supply chains are the ultimate goal. PIF is a dual mandate investor, so we invest for financial return, and then we also invest to drive the economic diversification of the economy. And we do that in part by setting up OEMs at the end of the value chain that in their own right need to be successful. They need to meet the needs of their customers. But they're also a catalyst to bring in supply chains over time. And so in order to do that, we work with our partners across government and the private sector to create the right enabling environment for those supply chains to be successful. So we look at talent-related issues. Mark mentioned NAVA, which is the National Automotive Vehicles Academy, which took in its first cohort of 210 students in October. This was from 28,000 applicants. We also work on policy-related efforts. So the King Salman automotive cluster has been set up as a special economic zone with a variety of tax and other incentives in order to make it easier to do business there. There is a major transportation and logistics upgrading that's happening across the kingdom, being led by the ministry. And we also put capital to work to accelerate the development of local supply chains. So we have a vehicle called Tusaru, which invests in the mobility ecosystem. Now, given the direction of travel for global manufacturing, increased automation means that cost of capital, access to clean energy, and kind of business-friendly policies in the right G2G trade environment are essential. And we think Saudi is very well positioned for that. Again, to accelerate the development of that infrastructure, we're working with partners such as Google and Amazon and others to set up data centers. There was a large announcement for a large initiative yesterday called Humane,
of course,
which I think you'll be hearing a lot about over the course of this day, which is another vector for accelerating the development of the infrastructure that businesses need.
Mr. Sabah, AI-powered industrial production can't happen without that digital infrastructure. Al-Fanar is involved in constructing and building data centers across the kingdom. How do you see that space evolving?
Yes, the Al-Fanar, yes, we are involved in data center. We are building data centers in the kingdom. Of course, this is a field where Saudi Arabia is very fit for that. It's mainly because of the availability of energy and competitive prices, and the kind of regulation which is being put by the government also encourage very much of localization. We are also very much involved on the other side, which is supplying the power need for the infrastructure, for the data center infrastructure. It's well known that the data center, normally this industry is very much energy hungry. So one of the main things which we are building our supply chain in Saudi Arabia is to cater for that. With many of our initiatives actually with our American friends. We are already producing with HP servers made in Saudi Arabia, and incidentally it is made by almost 100% female workers. We are also building power modules with Vertiv in Riyadh, also in the industrial area in Riyadh. We are also one of the main suppliers for the infrastructure which is being built in Saudi Arabia to cater for the data center.
In an energy-hungry sector, but where better to be than in the energy kingdom? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've heard today underscores that resilient supply chains are not just a defensive necessity, it's a strategic asset for industrial growth and global competitiveness. Thank you very much to my panelists, and thank you, our audience.
Thank you, Nasser, and your esteemed panelists for a great session. That was truly a powerful reminder of how collaboration and innovation are actually shaping the industrial backbone of our economies. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we shift our focus to another pillar of global stability and progress, which is energy. The next session is titled Powering the Future, Securing Global Energy Supply. And please join me in welcoming Dr. Daniel Yergin, Vice Chairman of CNP Global, to lead this vital discussion with his esteemed panelists. Welcome, Dr. Daniel. The stage is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Our topic this morning is securing the global energy supply, and we have 4 people on the panel who every day work on securing the energy supply from a global basis. Mohammed Farouk from Adas Holding, Anthony Petrollo from Neighbors, Garish Salagram from Weatherford, and Clay Williams from NOV. Obviously, the oil business, the natural gas business, it's a global business, but the emphasis is also on localization, and certainly that's a very big theme of Vision 2030. So I want to start by just talking to our panel about the roles that their companies have played in the U.S.-Saudi partnership in developing supply, and some examples of what you're doing in terms of collaboration. And I thought I'd begin with Anthony Petrollo, because I think for 40 years you were working in the kingdom. And then almost exactly 8 years ago, at the same time as when President Trump visited the first time here, you established a joint venture here. Why did you do that, and how's it worked out?
Well, it's worked out fantastically well. The premise of the joint venture was back in 2016, 2017, Aramco was interested in securing its long-term needs for drilling rigs. And at the same time, Vision 2030 was born, and they wanted to improve local manufacturing. So the premise of the joint venture was to create a program in which Aramco would commit to deploy 50 rigs costing about $2.5 to $3 billion over 10 years against 10-year payout contracts. And that kind of program was unparalleled in the industry, and it represented a great opportunity for Neighbors. We had been in the kingdom for 40 years. We had worked for Aramco.
So let me ask you, has it worked out?
It's worked out extremely well. Yeah.
Good, good. Let me ask Garish about your experience.
Yeah, we've been in the kingdom for just about as long, several decades of experience, and had tremendous partnership both with Aramco on developing technology, working closely with them, but also with other local companies. So we've had a joint venture in the kingdom for over 40 years. It's the most successful joint venture in the history of the company, has done extremely well and continues to develop new technology, create more value for both Aramco as well as for the shareholders.
Yeah, so I want to come back and talk about some of the new technologies, but Clay, your experience.
You bet. So like Tony and Girish, NOV, our organization has been here since 1977. What I'd say is about 10, 15 years ago, in conjunction with Vision 2030, we decided to step up our investment in the kingdom. This is such a large and important market for all of us. And a couple of great examples of collaboration that have come out of that. First is our Arabian rig manufacturing joint venture with Aramco. Aramco brought capital. They brought a lot of market insights. They know what they need in terms of drilling assets, working closely with Nabors and Tony and creating Sanad out of that. And of course, NOV brought manufacturing expertise. The result of that partnership is the world's largest, most efficient drilling equipment manufacturing operation that we built in Ras Al Khair, and it's been working great, delivered 10 rigs that are efficient and safe, low environmental impact. Another good example of that, NOV's very big in manufacturing composite tubulars around the world. We operate about 24 plants. We heard about the kingdom's aspirational policies to use oil in a way that doesn't create greenhouse gases. So petrochemicals and plastics and the like, we use those sorts of inputs, resins, and in our composite pipe. And so we built our largest, most efficient pipe plant here in the kingdom as well. And it's both have been great successes. This has been a very important and strategic investment for our company.
Well, I want to come back and discuss some of the specific technologies, but Mohammed, you have a particularly interesting story because you didn't start in Saudi Arabia, but now you're a Saudi Arabian company. Tell us how you came here.
Sure. I think we have a very exciting story. We started back maybe in the early 2000s, working in the region and focusing on offshore at that time.
And that was, you're an Egyptian company originally.
Exactly, at that time. And then in 2014, we started a relationship with Aramco, where Aramco started to encourage local and regional players to take part into the services activities with the offshore activities. And in 2017, we listed the company in London Stock Exchange, and we start actually to grow regionally more aggressively here in Saudi. We acquired some business from Nabors where they were selling their offshore to focus on the Sanad story. We acquired from Weatherford also some assets. And back in 2020, during the COVID, the PIF said, okay, guys, we want really to take the company private, and they got almost 37% of the company. And we started focusing on growing in Aramco. There was the growth plan of the 13 million barrel with aggressive growth in the offshore. We did one of the most aggressive projects by refurbishing 19 jackup, which is one of story where we bought most of the equipment from NOV as American companies. We refurbished those assets, we put them in place. We listed in Tadawul as a Saudi company where we moved our headquarters to Khobar and became our center of gravity. And we listed the company late 2023, and today we are one of the largest companies in Tadawul, even from an equity.
So you're based here?
Yes, correct.
But how many countries do you operate in now?
Today we operate in 12 countries, actually starting from Brazil in the west up to India and Southeast Asia, Thailand, Malaysia. But our center of gravity were more than 60% of the business within Aramco.
But you're a global company operating.
Correct. And this was a good example, moving a national player to be a global champion through this kind of a model, which I think comes with the 2030 vision.
Right. Clay, you've said it's important to be close to operations.
Yes.
Can you explain on that? Why?
Yeah, that was the sort of the basis for our strategic decision to do more here. But close to the customer means close customer relationships, and I think both parties benefit from that meaningfully. And so, as we sort of built out here in Saudi Arabia, we've gotten closer to all of our customers. And by the way, I've got 3 great customers here on the panel with me, and thanks to all 3 of you.
They're all good customers?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're grateful for them. But being here close to their operations enables us to do a better job servicing equipment, performing aftermarket support of what they're doing. I think it shortens the feedback loop for an OEM manufacturer like NOV to hear directly from our customers the challenges that they're running into, the opportunities to improve equipment and operations. And so it's really a partnership and a collaboration.
Because you provide the equipment and the components that these companies all use.
Exactly, right. And we're doing more and more manufacturing here in the Kingdom. We've grown our investment here sevenfold, and in 10 years, we operate through about 10 locations. About 5 of those are manufacturing plants, and we're building a 6th right now.
So I'd like to hear from you all in terms of new technological developments or technologies, some examples of what you've developed being based here.
Sure, I'm happy to start. So a moment ago, I mentioned our composite pipe manufacturing.
Why don't you explain what a composite pipe is?
So composite pipe uses fiberglass and resins to build pipe that can hold pressure and deal with temperatures that are found in the oil field.
And not corrode.
And not corrode. That's the key differentiator. So unlike carbon steel, it can withstand salt water and sour gases and those sorts of things much, much better, and is a really interesting and clever application of petroleum in a way to monetize that asset that doesn't have a greenhouse gas effect. And so the Aramco here has really embraced this technology, particularly around the unconventional developments. What we found when we built our plant here is we really created a manufacturing hub that could innovate new products for this market that we can now make in our plant in San Antonio, Texas, and sell to our oil field customers in the United States, and vice versa. So we sort of have these two composite pipe manufacturing hubs. They're advancing technology with the help of our customers, and it lifts both of their operations up. They both benefit from that network collaboration.
Right, and that started here.
Yes.
Composite. So,
yeah, echoing on what Trey said, I think we are very fortunate here to have a customer like Aramco who's got a very vast set of operations, and it gives us simultaneously a few things. One is it gives us a very large scale of operations, big volume, but also a customer that is very committed to the latest technology and wants to ensure reservoir integrity. So, working with them over the past several decades, a lot of new innovations that have come out of here in our cementing products business, for example, our stage tools that are used as part of the cementing process to ensure wellbore integrity. That's something that's got pioneered here. It's gotten used in other parts of the world. We've developed technologies very specifically on intervention around how to sidetrack wells that again have had a lot of application here, and then we have been able to take that to other parts of the world. One of the highest degrees of managed pressure drilling adoption, that's something that Weatherford's been a pioneer here, and we've learned a lot through that. And what's really exciting about it is there is a very focused, very definitive and very purposeful sense of development of technology. It's here's a problem that we're trying to solve, how do we work together to do it, come up with a solution, a very process-oriented fashion of saying, here's how we're going to deploy it, and then you see what else you can do with it, and then it becomes something that's available for other parts.
And started from here.
Yeah.
Tony?
Yeah, so in the United States, actually, we started developing some new technology to automate drilling rigs. We've developed our own operating system similar to an iPhone that has an app environment with it, and we've also focused on functionalizing the rig with robots. And we're in the process of doing that in Saudi Arabia. We actually have 7 rigs already starting to operate that. And the concept is a safer environment, more efficient. It gets people out of the red zone, out of harm's way, and optimizes drilling performance. I think it's the future of the industry, and Aramco has been a steadfast partner in helping us exploit it.
Right.
Yes, I think as a global player today, we have 51 jackup, which is the largest number of jackup worldwide. We need to monitor very important aspects on the ESG, which is the safety, which is a very important aspect for Aramco. For Aramco, safety comes even before productivity. So we developed what's called Rig Eye, which is artificial intelligence engine with the video streaming to monitor all the operation on the rig real time, looking at red zone, looking at critical job, looking at safety aspects, and give a real-time warning to what's called operating command center, saying this guy is doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing, and stops things if it's going to be wrong. This has developed here as a starting point with a few of the jackup. Today it has been democratized on all the jackups within Aramco, on all the land rigs within Aramco we operate, and even we take this technology all over the world. So all our fleet now is equipped with the Rig Eye technology, which is AI driven.
What do you call it, the red?
Rig Eye. Which is the eye for the rig.
Right.
And it's AI driven, and it's very successful, and actually working to patent it now and even sell this technology in
When did you start developing it?
We started developing here in Khobar.
How long ago?
It took us like 2.5 years and 1 year to develop, 1 year to start on the pilot, and now it's on all our rigs.
So you mentioned AI, and I think it'd be very useful, obviously, to just ask for all of you, is AI having much of an impact on your companies yet? Or is it something that's still in development?
I think it's in the second or third inning of the ball game. The idea is to use AI to read downhole information.
For those who don't follow baseball, that means about 1/3 of the way.
Yeah, about 1/3 of the way. To use AI to read downhole information from the downhole wellbore and use that to optimize stuff at the surface in terms of what the rig is actually doing, to optimize ROP and drilling time. And we all have applications along those lines today. That is the future. And it's also the future for our people on the rig, because historically, the iron was dumb iron, a lot of manual labor, but the goal of this automation is to actually upskill the talent. And the idea is for a driller who runs a drilling rig, he has a high school education. In about 7 years or 10 years, he can be the person who runs the drilling rig. It's a $55 million piece of equipment. And the idea is with these tools now, he'll have a profession similar to what a G5 pilot has. And that becomes a destination job. So the quality of employment is actually going to be increased as we roll out this technology. I think it's very exciting for the labor force.
Right.
Yep. No, I completely agree. I think it's had a very deep and profound effect in several areas where we've been able to apply it. But what's exciting is there's still so much other elements that just are untouched, and we still live in a world that is filled with a lot of manual processes, and there's a lot of excitement. I'll give you two very quick examples. One, just sort of picking up from where Dr. Farooq was talking about, very similar kind of an application where we do contracts where we've got complete ownerships of these LSTK type of contracts, lump sum turnkey, and same sort of concept where we've got AI built into the rig floor, and we're able to monitor everything. We're able to see if someone's doing something inappropriately. There's an alarm that goes off. Very similar concept. I was on one of these rigs a few weeks back, and it was fascinating to see. We played around a little bit, and immediately it's very real time, and it's very appropriate. Another example is in our tubular running service business, where we've incorporated AI into the system. It's a fully automated system. You now need only one person to operate it, so again, completely safe from not having anyone in the red zone standpoint. But what it now does is also have built-in AI algorithms that the computer generates and determines what the ideal torque is. So you don't have, again, any human intervention, judgment that goes in, and you're again guaranteed a better wellbore.
And I guess as pointed out, you're running a $55 million piece of equipment. You want it to operate properly.
Indeed.
Clay?
Yeah, I think we are also just on the edge of seeing all the wonderful things that AI can do in our industry, which has been dominated by a lot of sort of tribal knowledge, experience, the computer.
What do you call it? Tribal knowledge?
Tribal knowledge about how do we
pass
drill
it down.
How do we drill in this particular basin? And what we're finding, and what others here on the stage are finding, is that the computer learns much faster than the humans in so many areas. And there's sort of an interesting offshoot of that we're benefiting from at NOV, which is the AI needs data sets to learn from. It needs data to feed it. And we're finding great opportunities here in the kingdom and elsewhere around the world in building out the infrastructure at the edge to do more edge computing, to put data into the cloud. We're working with Aramco here in the kingdom to employ our wired drill pipe technology, which basically increases the rate of gathering data from the bit, from the very end of the drill string that might be miles in the earth, to the surface by 10,000-fold, which is what wired drill pipe can do. So it's basically a broadband connection to the bottom of the hole. So that much richer data stream enables these AI models to learn faster, to make microsecond sorts of decisions around operating the drilling rig, for instance. And Aramco's been a great partner in highlighting the benefits of that sort of technology.
Yeah. So I want to turn now to the question of supply chains, which of course has already been a topic of discussion, and ask you guys, if we were up here 10 years ago, would we have been talking about supply chains?
Probably in a very different context, if we would.
Okay, tell us what's changed.
So I think, the fact that you've got 4 CEOs here today talking about supply chains, it's in itself a very significant change. It's not a function that's sort of in the bowel of the organization anymore. It's something that's very front and central. It's mission critical, and it's something that is a critical element of enterprise risk management.
So why has this happened?
My view is it's very simple. It's a very simple function of being able to deliver for customers. And without an incredibly robust supply chain and without understanding all the different ways it can go rise. We have learned over the past few years there's everything from supply shocks caused because of trade wars, because of geopolitical conflicts, because of pandemics, all kinds of stuff happens. So you need to understand how your supply chain works.
Supply chain has always been core to our operations. It's always been critical. As a capital-intensive business, you need to feed the beast, so to speak, and you have to have reliable ways of feeding it. And the concept of delivering, as Clay was saying, having sources close to the action to support that is important for turnover.
But if supply chains up here is a big concern, but if you went back a few years ago with supply chains down there, we're trying to get at is just from your experience on the ground, what's changed? Obviously, COVID was one thing, a world of tariffs, trade wars, national security.
Yeah, I think we need to draw an important factor, which is Aramco, as one of the largest producers, a few years ago started a very important program, which is the ICTAVA program, in Kingdom Total Value Added. And this program put a lot of weight on how much is really produced within the Saudi Arabia.
In other words, localization.
Localization. So this has been a major transformation where today companies started at 10% contents, today reach 50 to 60% contents. And this makes a major aspects because having the proximity to the action plan is very important. Producing locally, fostering the economy, making it more cheaper, more affordable, make it the timing. So I think this has played an important role over the last 10 years, and I think it's still progressing, and I think it's a very important factor in the formula.
Yeah, what he said is very important in the sense that, for example, today SANAD spends $600 million a year on maintenance, CapEx, and capital expenditures to keep the rigs operating. 5 years ago, the percentage of spent in country to deliver that was maybe 70%. Today, we're at 92% of the $600 million we're spending in the country. That's a huge change, but that's better for the rigs, it's better for our operations, and of course, better for the country.
Right. But so let me ask you this, on a global basis now, not just your operations here, have you had to change how you manage procurement and thinking about supply chains because of tariffs, political issues, security issues?
Yeah, we certainly have. I would say as a global manufacturer, we've always had to be a little bit nimble because of global conflicts that would happen sometimes around the world. In the first Trump administration, we dealt with a round of tariffs that caused us to rethink what we're making where and adjust. But what really highlighted the importance of supply chain was the disruption that came out of the COVID lockdowns and really taught the world that we were all kind of living in a world where supply chains had been very tightly optimized by a generation of MBAs, I think, that were very focused
on efficiency.
On efficiency and cost only. And what we learned is that, hey, resiliency matters too. And since that time, I think the designs of our supply chains, of everyone's, has been more oriented around the resilience dimension as well.
Can you fill in, or any of you fill in, when we say resiliency, kind of give some examples of what that means in a granular way?
I would say diversity of vendors, multiple vendors that have been pre-qualified to supply, and the capability then to be flexible, to adjust to whatever's next in terms of a supply chain shock.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I think, ultimately what we're all trying to do in similar and sometimes slightly different fashions, but we're trying to balance three things that are all equally important to get that resiliency element. The first is security of supply. The second is cost. And the third is cycle times. So we're trying to make sure we're balancing all of that, and all of that leads back to how do you design your supply chain to get this ideal balance if you've got the right volumes on a global basis, but you've also got the right local capability to deliver fast as well as drive that in-country value.
So does that, go ahead, Tony?
I was going to say, historically, a lot of material came from the Far East or the U.S. and was imported into this region. With Vision 2030, there's been a sea change here. And give you an example, today we can actually make a catwalk, which is a piece of equipment for a rig, cheaper in Saudi Arabia than we can anywhere in the world. We're actually running costs 20, 30% less than anywhere in the world.
Why?
Because of the investment that was made here in local sources, local content. The labor pool is very talented, and the sources and access to stuff is really improved. And so it's a big difference, especially when you look at landed cost.
Right. So most of you have all been operating here, as you say, 30, 40 years. So in the last 5 years, tell us about the changes you've seen in terms of the kind of capabilities that you've described in the workforce and the ability to deliver lower cost.
Yeah, so the talent has improved dramatically. We've made a lot of investment with local vocational schools and universities. We have engineers here that have graduated that rival anywhere else in the world, and the work ethic is really top class. That's a large driver of the change that we've seen here in the kingdom.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think talent is really a key differentiator. And back to Dr. Farouk's point on this whole focus around ICTWA and Saudization, that's really allowed a simultaneously from the operator side, from the supplier side, as well as from the university side, a tremendous focus on developing talent. So we're now able to bring in students as interns, get them in as early graduates, see them progress through the leadership ranks, see movement across companies, which is ultimately healthy for the industry, and really then have a workforce that's very self-sufficient, that's capable, versus this notion of you're just constantly rotating expats in for 2 to 3 years. You're always going to have some degree of that, some element of that, but having that base load, that base capacity of local talent, I think is incredibly critical to any economy and any sector.
Yeah, I think it has different dimension. One is the talent and people side. Again, I have to refer to Aramco because it's the university there. They initiated something called SADA, Saudi Arabian Drilling Academy, which I think most of us has students and graduates going there. And we have to sponsor those graduates coming from school to this program, and we pay the money. They get the best in-class training, and we got very good employees at the end. The other dimension which we need to mention is the capital market. The capital market, including the debt and the equity, believes in the business, understand the business quite well. So we have the right financing, we have the right understanding from the equity market, which put investments there for a long term. And this is a very important enabler, allowing us really to be a long-term player and really looks for that in a very positive manner. So it's the people side, the investment side, and also the technology today available.
So Clay, were you going to add something about the people?
I was, and I agree and echo the other comments made here around the workforce. Terrific. So you can build a factory, you can have a terrific workforce, which we do here. The third part of that for a manufacturer is we were concerned about the supply chains of raw materials feeding our factories once we built these things and staffed them. And the kingdom has been very, very good about listening to our concerns and responding to them. So over the past 5 years, getting back to your question, we've seen the investment in all of the other supply chains that produce the raw materials, the steel that we need in our operations. We buy HDPE from SABIC. We buy resins from JANA for our composite pipes that I mentioned earlier. And so the build out of this ecosystem is really sort of it's closing the loop on everything and really making, low-cost catwalks, for instance, a possibility and a reality for this market.
So we're talking about talent here. Let me just ask you, since you operate in the United States too, is talent a problem in the United States?
I would say talent's an important issue everywhere and a challenge to just find the best and the brightest constantly. I think I think there is a tremendously greater focus in our industry in this particular part of the world and not as much in the United States. So I think the US tends to pose a slightly bigger challenge, just given, I would say a tremendously greater amount of optionality and lesser interest.
Right.
I'll add, I think in a lot of ways our industry has been demonized a bit.
Not here, but there.
Not here, but there. The U.S. and Europe, and those two markets for us is more challenging than most of the rest of the world.
Right. But here, you find a very motivated and
absolutely
talented workforce. Right. What about emissions? If we change the topic, addressing methane and those issues, how are you playing that?
Yeah, I think what we started an important program is to reduce the emissions for our rigs by looking at, first of all, putting batteries to take some of the loads from the engines, so we reduce the number of engines and the number of operating hours, which I think is important to reduce emissions significantly. We look at using, for instance, the LED for all the lighting in the rigs, which is a significant amount. We look on energy saving. So there is a very important program, which again we started here within Saudi Aramco, and it's going quite well. And we are actually taking it outside now in other countries. So I think that's an important to have the emissions, specifically from the rig prospect, from lifting prospects. Lifting here is very low emission by nature. So I think, but I'm speaking about the engines and the rigs and the services.
I'd like to hear from the rest of you on.
There's a big misconception that the hydrocarbon industry doesn't care about emissions and sustainability, and that's a big mistake. Take our host here at Aramco. They made it a strategic priority for sustainability. They, among the major producers, they have the lowest CO2 per BOE in the world, which is amazing, and they're going to do better than that in the future. As Dr. Farouk said, when it looks at the drilling rig today produces 20 to 25 tons of CO2 a day, and there's 1,500 around the world. And so the industry is making a priority to find solutions, everything from converting diesel engines to dual fuel with natural gas, fuel additives like hydrogen or nanomaterial to add to for combustion, digitalization to make the drilling process more efficient, to get more wells less CO2 per well. And those initiatives are all being driven in the field by people looking every day for efficiencies. I think the energy industry over the years has done really major problems that's tackled very well. I think they are going to tackle this problem, and you're not going to see just change, you're going to see leadership from the energy industry.
Right, and certainly the enormous progress on methane, which goes unrecognized.
Yeah, look, I'll just add to it. We look at it again with a simplistic framework, 3 elements to it. The first is reporting. The old adage of measurements drive behavior. So we just released last week our 4th annual sustainability report that shows a tremendous improvement in our own emissions over the past few years, and we'll continue to do that. The second is really how do we decarbonize our own operations, doing a tremendous amount of work around that globally, more electrification of our fleets, reduction in driving, etc. In Saudi, for example, we've converted our power sources and our operating base, from diesel to connected to the grid. So that drives a reduction. And the third is around how do we help customers decarbonize their operations, and that's everything from reducing the number of people that need to go out to well sites, again, fewer trips, fewer driving, automated technologies like I talked about earlier with Vero, and we've got an emissions detection and management platform in collaboration with Honeywell that we have launched. So things like that again bring technology to the fore.
Yeah, the drilling efficiency that Tony and Dr. Farouk just referenced, I think, is a real way to impact the greenhouse gas intensity of barrels. And there's a really good example here in the Kingdom that applies the technology I referenced earlier. The wired drill pipe enabled Aramco to do much better geosteering in their reservoir. And they actually published an SPE paper recently that said that particular well that they drilled had 30% higher net to gross, which simplistically means 30% higher production and recoveries, right? So you're amortizing a larger oil volume over that greenhouse gas footprint. Ultimately, that's more efficient coming out of this digital technology.
Right. So one last question. Just recently, I wrote a new epilogue for my book, The Prize, and said, what are the lessons of it? And one of the obvious lessons is that this industry moves in cycles. There's a lot of wisdom on this stage. What's the advice that you would give to people about and how you manage through the cycles? Because there's always going to be cycles.
There's a lot of scars on this stage, Dan.
Okay.
Sometimes they're a little
experience.
bit...
Let's call it experience.
Experience. So, well, 40 years in the oil field, I would counsel patients and just recognize that what this industry does is critical and it's important, and it lifts billions of people out of poverty every single day. And I think you got to stay focused on that, keep your teams focused on that, the fact that we're doing good in the world every single day. And I know one day something will replace oil and gas. It's going to be a lower carbon footprint. In fact, I would bet on this industry to figure out what that's going to be. But in the meantime, let's stick to the mission and keep doing what the world requires us to do.
So Girish, managing through cycles.
Yeah, completely agree with what Clay said. I'd add to it of really focusing on what's important consistently without allowing yourself to get whipsawed by the cycles. Cycles will happen, it's just a function.
And what's communicating with your team.
Right, and what's important is focusing on the things that matter, customers, operations, and technology. To Clay's point, this is where the action is. Just a case in point, I think I've met Clay 4 times this year. 3 of them have happened to be in Saudi Arabia. So, and we're both based in Houston. So, go figure. So I think
this is where it's happening.
This is where it is. So really spending time with your customers, really driving the technology that matters, that makes us a better company and a better industry for the longer term.
Tony, your experience or advice?
So we're all public companies, and you have the vagaries of the public markets and the quest to meet quarterly earnings and profit maximization, and that leads you to focus on price. And I think that's a mistake. I think if you want to build a long-term business, you got to focus on long-term structure and growth potential, and building that stable platform for long-term growth and shared upside is, I think, the secret for success, and that should be the priority. That gives you a big business, but also gives you a great future.
Mohammed?
Yeah, I think what Tony said is the key, where you focus on the cost, where you're becoming very cost efficient, and then give your client a very affordable price, not a very high price, because affordability is the key.
But through the...
Exactly, so affordability. So today we focus on affordability, where we have one of the highest backlog contracts, which give you the time to pass this cycle. So this is the affordability is the secret, and affordability happens through cost efficiency.
Right. Well, let me thank all 4 of you for joining us today to discuss securing the global energy supply of the future. And these are the people, among others, many others here, who are doing that. So please join me in thanking them. Thank you.
Hello. Well, what a productive morning we had. Hi, Dan. We are going to break now for lunch, but I have 2 quick announcements. Please be back at 2 p.m. sharp, because we have a star-studded afternoon of leaders and leaders from industry as well. And also, please be sure to visit some of the exhibitions from our great partners. They have some really, really great setups in Prosperity Hall. So take the time, and we'll see you back here at 2.